communication offered by Commissioner Grady, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Today, O God, we ask for your Spirit to be at work in our midst, that you might stir up in us the gifts that we need to lead this city with integrity and focus on the task at hand. Give us the courage to consider all those who are affected by the decisions we make. Help us to remember those who labor on our behalf and our employees and vendors and all those whose livelihoods are connected to the city. We give you thanks for our citizens who have placed their trust in us, and we ask for your courage and wisdom to be good stewards of both their trust and their resources. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Presser, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Brady?
Here.
Waddington?
Here.
Mr. Poole?
Here.
Here.
Here. Lockhart?
Here.
Here.
Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of June 26, 2017. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the June 26th meeting and dispense with the formal reading.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We turn now to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address any of the regular agenda items tonight, including the consent agenda, please step to the microphone, give us your thoughts. Share with us your name and address, too, please.
Sharon Johnson, 1139 5th Street. I just have one question on, I think it's item 5, the wayfinding signage project. I'd like to know the exact figure that's coming out of issue 8. It looks like $486,399, but I'm not clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We will answer that in the course of our discussion. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way. Would this be a good time to ask questions on the neighborhood initiative, or should I wait until after the presentation, do you think?
Any comments that you wish to make are fine. That is part of the agenda.
Okay. I'm going to speak tonight right now for Save Our Shoreline Parks, on behalf of Save Our Shoreline Parks. The neighborhood initiative pertaining to the Cove area. I'm sure you've all taken a look at that document. The area of concern in the Cove area is the pier track, which runs from the opening behind City Hall all the way down to the end of Ogon Street. And I'm sure you all remember the controversy I think we had at the end of McEwen Street probably a year or two ago, when the city and the Guerras flip-flopped property between the end of Ogons and the end of McEwen Street. I received a text the other day that they've got a sign at the end of McEwen Street that rivals a sign saying this way to Cedar Point. It's almost the size of a billboard. It says no trespassing. So I don't know if they're still having issues. The Guerras are having issues with people, going around the fence or climbing the fence. The issue of the pier track goes way back to almost 1975. And in that time frame between 75 and the current time, there's been, through history, attempts by the city to open the pier track, which it was meant to be opened as per the purchase of the property by the city from the railroad. Every time there's an attempt by the city to reopen that, the boathouse owners, and I think there's only like 10 or 12 of them at the end of Cove Park Boulevard, get in a big uproar and they get a hold of their attorney, and then all of a sudden the balls drop. I think this time around with the neighborhood initiative, that's actually an anchor project for that area. So I'm hoping this time that the city manager and the rest of staff does due diligence and really puts a really good effort to try to get that open, whether it be from McEwen Street or Ogons. If we've got to find some way to get around the issue, and when I say get around, I mean physically get around the area that the boathouse owners are saying that they own. If you talk to some of them, they'll tell you they own halfway to Cedar Point. Now that's questionable, very questionable. On item number 5, which is the wayfinding, we've talked about this in the Bayfront Corridor Committee meetings. We've talked about this in the Rec Board meetings. Let's make sure that as part of the wayfinding program, we find a way to have this company, with the amount of money we're spending on this, to put up signage indicating public access points along Sandusky Bay. If you take a look, when you drive by Battery Park, you'll see a sign for Damon's. You'll see a sign for Battery Park Marina, but you see no sign saying Battery Park. And that's why a lot of people, even local people, think that Battery Park is a private park for just the boaters that boat at Battery Park. As a matter of fact, they have a private pool. So that kind of, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying, Mayor? Actually, I think that's it, believe it or not. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Anyone else present wishing to address the commission on any agenda items? We turn now to our chief of police for a presentation on 3 really minted morning officers. I'm excited to have all of you here, officers.
Thank you, Mr. President, and the Commission for allowing us just a few brief moments to introduce several of these officers. As we had done in the last year, we started to introduce the officers, and that way it'll give the Commission a kind of a look at our new officers and then the community as well. And they last time gave a very good presentation and introduction to themselves, so I've kind of geared these guys up that they better be better than the last ones. So there's a lot of competition amongst these guys already, and they're already jazzing with each other, so I think they're going to fit in just fine. But the first officer is William Shelton. He's from the Cleveland, Ohio area. And then Brett Bird is up in the Wadsworth area, but he's a homegrown Perkins kid. And everybody, I'm sure, knows his mother, Vicky, so Vicky's son. And then Darian Cook is from the Norwalk area. So they're going to just give a brief introduction to themselves, and if you have any questions. So thank you.
How everybody doing? Good. My name is William Shelton, 26 years of age. I was born in New York. However, at the age of 7, I relocated to Cleveland, and where I grew up and began my police career. Like any other kid, I wanted to be a pro athlete, preferably a basketball star. But my legs were too short and I couldn't dunk like I wanted to. And one day a veteran officer walked up to me and said, "William, you should be a cop. You possess raw leadership qualities," and walked away. I'm like, well, what was that about? And so as a leap of faith, you know, I got in shape, joined the academy. I couldn't wrap my mind around, you know, what the veteran officer meant. And one day it dawned on me, I put 2 together, police officer and leadership. He believed I possessed the ability to influence change, and what better way to reach the community? The answer is being a cop. In this position, I can slowly change lives, give people hope that was hopeless, and give youth the courage to believe in themselves. I'm here today, and I'm not bigger than you, I'm not badder than you, but I am your police officer, and I'm here to help you. I thank you guys for giving me the time to speak, and I look forward to seeing you in the city of Sandusky.
I don't know how I'm going to beat that, but I'll try. Like Chief Warzik said, my name is Brett Bird. I am a native of Sandusky, specifically Perkins Township. I'm a proud 2006 graduate of Perkins Schools. Kind of like him, you know, I was a leader in sports in school. I was a captain of the football team and the track team my senior year. I didn't really get the accolades I would have liked because of a knee injury, but I did the best, and I know that I left everything on the field and on the track. I'm a proud father of 1, soon to be 2 here in September. I finally have the boy I always wanted. I kind of started my law enforcement career opposite in a way. I worked for the last 5 years with the Department of Youth Services, and if nobody is quite knowledgeable who that is, that's the state's juvenile prison system. That's where they house the most violent the most violent juvenile offenders the state has to offer. I got interested in that because I wanted to work with juveniles. I was interested in seeing kind of the dynamics of who they are, what they've done, and how we can kind of fix their behavior and habilitate them to be a productive citizen. I realized with my history of kind of being a leader, having good knowledge of the right and wrong things to do, I said, hey, why not throw my hat in at being a police officer? I was a police officer at a small village called Brady Lake, and then eventually the village of Latonia as well. I've taken a lot of specific training in drug, narcotics, and patrol operations, dealing with controlled substances and things of that nature. And then as I started doing it, and I saw that my history with DYS and the good working relationships I had with the youths, you know, I thought, why not bring that dynamic into also community policing? So specifically, first I need to make my probation. And then maybe I can kind of work towards some of the goals I have, working with at-risk teens. I know with the kind of the drug background that I've been doing, because that's what I was interested in initially, also kind of helping at-risk teens as well who are maybe more susceptible to abuse drugs and stuff like that. I'm excited to be home. To me, I have a lot of high expectations for myself. Sometimes that's my biggest weakness, is I'm really hard on myself. But like I said, I'm happy to be back. There's a lot of work to do, and I'm glad you guys are allowing me to be part of this family working for the city of Sandusky. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Darian Cook. I'm from Norwalk. I'm 23 years old. I come from a family of law enforcement. My grandma was a retired lieutenant with Huron County Sheriff's Office. My great-grandfather was a police chief for a period of time. And I'm the son of a hard-working man who's worked most of his life doing factory work, never got the experience of college education, but he always stuck to working hard and giving me a better life than he was able to have. My mother is a registered nurse at Parkview here in the city. This has been home to me, being so close. I lived my whole life in Norwalk. And I'm just looking forward to giving kids that option of being at a fork in a road and having somebody from a position of authority to guide them in a direction other than they may have chosen, you know, without that experience. I look forward to being out in the community and making a difference with the youth. And I appreciate all the hard work you guys have put into making Sandusky a great place to live and work. And I look forward to meeting all of you more. So thank you.
One thing that stood out with all three of these candidates is their passion for the youth of the community and the community policing. So we're very excited to have them aboard, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Sandusky. And I just want to say I appreciate the altruism I hear in your voices and your comments. Father Orzak has indoctrinated as well. But it's altruism and optimism that's tempered, obviously, with the realism that goes with your jobs. And I'm just excited to see that you're able to attract that kind of talent to our community. So welcome aboard, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Regarding the neighborhood outreach, the Sandusky Neighborhood Initiative, and presented by Talon Moore. He's going to start us off, and Talon, of course, is the neighborhood outreach coordinator.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the rest of the commission, citizens, members of the CUDC who were a part of the neighborhood process. I'd just like to go over a few things, and then I will pass the presentation off to Terry Schwartz, who is the director of the CUDC, to go over some of the individual neighborhood plans. But first, I would just like to talk about why neighborhood planning is important. I'd just like to go over a little bit of the Sandusky Neighborhood Initiative process and then go over a couple things going on outside of the initiative. So why is neighborhood planning important? Why do we do these kind of targeted plans? It's very meaningful to residents, is the first thing I've learned. I can't tell you how many residents throughout this process have told me, this is awesome that you guys are doing this, keep up the good work. They have a lot of things that they'd like to see in their neighborhoods, and they told us so. So that's one reason. Strong neighborhoods tends to equal stronger relationships between neighbors and more social capital for everyone involved, so that is good as well. This kind of targeted investment and planning tends to strengthen home values and the real estate market for the area. So we're looking at that. There's much more impact when it comes to targeted, concentrated investments in neighborhoods, for example, as opposed to spreading that same amount of money over a whole city. And then finally, it really can encourage further involvement, whether that be from neighbors, city volunteers, or other public or private investors. So that's kind of why we've been doing this initiative, and I'd like to just talk a little bit more about the process now. So in 2016, the Sandusky City Commission adopted the Bicentennial Vision Plan, and that vision plan spelled out some specific recommendations when it came to neighborhoods. One of those recommendations was to hire a neighborhood outreach coordinator. That's me. You guys have done that. But the other suggestion was to initiate a neighborhood planning process, and that's kind of where the Sandusky Neighborhood Initiative came into play. So the Sandusky Neighborhood Initiative is a planning process in which we selected between 5 to 7 neighborhoods, 6 in this case, to undergo an individualized planning process. These neighborhoods were selected based on demographic and housing diversity, and I think when you take them together as a whole, they do a good job of representing the city. So the neighborhoods that we selected for this process are as follows. The Cove District, and you can kind of see them up there on the map. The Cove District, 1st through 5th Street neighborhood, south of Kilbourne neighborhood, the Garden District, the South Side, and the West End. So in each one of these neighborhoods, we had public meetings where we collected input from the residents of the neighborhood. The first meetings were held in October. We had a follow-up meeting a couple months later in December, and then a couple months ago we had our final meeting at the State Theater where we presented the plans along the way and collected input. Each neighborhood plan calls for the following: a planned or existing anchor project to either implement or support, a model block area, so that is between 150 to 200 homes in the neighborhood to receive targeted housing and demolition funds, neighborhood ID and beautification projects, and neighborhood outreach, including programming and events. So that's kind of where we're at with the neighborhood initiative. Before I turn over to Terry to talk a little bit more about the individual plans, I would just like to go over some of the things that we're doing in the city outside of the neighborhood that also still affects our neighborhoods. So in the area of housing development and blight, we had a study done that tells us that 200 homes are in a condition to where they need to be demolished. In between 2015 and 2016, almost 50 properties were demolished, and there are another 40 planned for this year. So that's very good, and we have over $1 million from the Neighborhood Initiative Program to do these demolitions. So we're moving in that area. When it comes to staff, the city has hired a full-time housing manager to oversee the code enforcement division, as well as a new code enforcement officer, which brings the total to 4, as well as having 4 seasonal employees to cut grass and mitigate quality of life issues like that. As far as ordinances go, I've also revised some ordinances. A revised high grass ordinance, a revised trash ordinance, and a revised dead and unsafe tree ordinance. All these have resulted in more abatements from the previous year, so we're really out trying to attack blights in the neighborhoods, as well as a rental registration program that requires every rental property to be inspected at least every 3 years. As far as neighborhood amenities goes, as we all know, we have a strong collection of parks, and we're working to upgrade those. So there are many parks in the 5-year capital plan. Investments have been made recently, last year, in Orlando Pace Park and Wilbert Park. There's currently an upgrade master plan process going on at Lions Park, and several are on the docket coming up in the future, including Churchwell Park, JC Park, and Huron Park. There's a tree program that the city has implemented, which has gotten rid of a lot of trees over the past few years. Over 200 trees we tore down last year and planted 145 new. There's a sidewalk program that's very popular. People love to have their even sidewalks. Almost 3,000 feet of sidewalks were replaced last year, and almost 6,000, almost double that, are planned for this year. So we're in a good spot there. And street resurfacing is always going on. 14 parts of 14 streets are due to be rescheduled next year. So in neighborhood safety and engagement, me, the neighborhood outreach coordinator, I've been working within the neighborhoods to set up programming and engagement efforts, going to block watches, that kind of thing. The police department has 2 full-time community impact officers who are more proactive and focus on quality of life issues. And the city is also looking at adding a nuisance officer to deal with more code-related concerns as well. And then finally, just some stats on our police force. They conducted many business walks last year, over 700 business walks, 750 neighborhood walks, and over 800 park walks. What this all means is our police department is doing a great job with community policing, and I think that's very important in the neighborhoods as well. So basically, we will be tracking this initiative year to year. We have baseline stats, and Terry will talk a little bit more about those when I pass over to her. But we have baseline stats that we've taken for all the neighborhoods, and we're going to track those every year to see improvement. So that is basically everything I have to go through. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have, and if not, I'll go ahead and pass the podium over to Terry.
Maybe we'll call on you later on.
Okay, that's right. Just let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Talon. And thanks to all of you. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. We always enjoy working on neighborhood plans because they have such immediate impacts, but it actually is pretty rare to have the level of engagement that we've encountered here in Sandusky. We have a lot of people who came to almost every meeting. And so we really welcome all of the feedback, and we hope that when you see the final plan that you all can see your fingerprints on it. You know, we really did our best to pull together the information and to really boil down the recommendations to what you have in front of you, which is the executive summary. The full plan document is 160-some pages long. Pretty much anything that we talked about and rose to the level of a priority with the community appears in the full plan, but in the executive summary, we really just picked the highlights, the things that seem to be most important to the people who participated in the process, and also the things that are most immediately achievable. So hopefully, as the plan is adopted, you'll start to see implementation quickly. So I'm just going to go over for all 6 neighborhoods. The model block area, just the way that that has been kind of coalesced in each neighborhood, what we're considering the anchor project or anchor projects in each neighborhood, 3 to 4 neighborhood identity and beautification ideas, and then some other potential priorities. So I'll review those for all 6 neighborhoods and then just talk briefly, as Talon mentioned, about how to measure the outcomes of this effort. So we're going to begin with the 1st through 5th neighborhood, which you see here. For the 1st through 5th neighborhood, the model block area includes 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Street between Sycamore Line and Ontario Street. The reason that that area was defined as the model block zone was to leverage the investment that's being made in new Ontario school. So if through model blocks there can be some, kind of enhanced code enforcement and streetscape neighborhood beautification improvements, all that kind of curb appeal investment that we hope to see in this neighborhood, then hopefully the neighborhood will see an uptick in property values and market interest of when houses become available for sale. Families will want to move in there and take advantage of the fact that a new school is being built right in the neighborhood. So the anchor project for the 1st through 5th area is Ontario School, and what we're showing in this image is all of the opportunities that you have through pedestrian and bicycle connections to really make that school feel embedded and a part of the community. And so the anchor project is the school, but the investments can kind of consist of the connections into the school. For identity and beautification in the 1st through 5th area, this was the neighborhood where we had the most discussions, the most detailed feedback about what the neighborhood is called and how different areas of the neighborhood are historically known. So McKelvey Platte and historic Erie Boulevard in particular are parts of the neighborhood that can be called out in signage and identity as a way of just sort of reinforcing the history of the neighborhood. Also, enhanced landscape landscaping along some of the big corridors, particularly Sycamore, Cleveland Street, and First Street for beautification. What we're showing here in this little drawing is an area of Cleveland Street where right now there's that kind of pyramid-shaped building, but finding opportunities to both green up the edges of some of these corridors and also create small green spaces like that site potentially can be. The third placemaking beautification identity project for the neighborhood includes traffic calming. Residents told us that there were areas of the neighborhood where slowing down the traffic with perhaps additional stop signs and definitely more pronounced crosswalks would be important. So those are the main identity and beautification ideas, but there were other ideas that came up that we wanted to make sure and include in the executive summary, which include alley maintenance, possible crosswalks and pedestrian signage along Ogons in order to encourage people north to make that connection to the lake. Green space improvements, maybe at a small site at the end of Ogons. Oops. I don't have that picture in here. I thought I did. It should be in your plan. That could make that connection to the pier track. And also a possible trail along the railroad spur. People were very interested in, kind of that possibility from the southwest corner of the neighborhood linking up to the lakefront and downtown. And then lastly, possibly upgrading the Sandusky shrubs since they are such an important and prominently located neighborhood feature. Sorry if I'm going through this too quickly, but we will take time, as much time as you need, to talk about it in more detail. For the Cove District, the model block is primarily Meg Street, as you see here in blue, and also part of Sycamore Street. Because this is sort of the main way into the neighborhood and into the downtown for a lot of people, upgrades and investments on Meg Street will really have an impact far beyond the individual properties themselves. It'll begin to change perceptions and really kind of strengthen the identity of the neighborhood by improving that sort of front door district. For the anchor project in this neighborhood is the pier track and also an opportunity for reconstructing Meg Street. Those things are important to, kind of strengthening the neighborhood and also creating in the pier track a destination that would be valuable for people throughout the city and the region. It's going to be a pretty unique, destination. Under neighborhood and beautification, some of the things that rose to the level of priority include signage and lighting and landscaping for the major gateways into the neighborhood, particularly lighting on Cove Street at Sycamore, because that is it's kind of a dark place, but also a place where really the heart of the neighborhood can be better highlighted. Opportunities to create small but meaningful areas for public access near the waterfront, including, kind of the opportunity of creating small green spaces on Megs that would open up some views to the water, and also kind of to continue to connect the bike paths to First Street and connect into downtown. Under other potential priorities include a trail along the railroad spur, opportunities for winter amenities. We know that the summer months are the peak time in the Cove District, but people do live there year-round, so making the neighborhood appealing and interesting in the winter was something we talked about quite a lot. And also there were some safety concerns with absentee landlords and break-ins that isn't really a, kind of a beautification idea, but just something that, of course, would be very important to the people who live in the neighborhood. Moving right along, south of Kilbourne Platte, the model block area is along the Hancock corridor between Scott and Monroe. Oops, sorry. I wasn't keeping up. So here you see the model blocks area in blue, as I said, along the Hancock corridor. Model blocks areas are all kind of about the same size, plus or minus about 200 households. And so by targeting investments in this area, it can make kind of a high impact on Hancock and the surrounding streets in order to bring properties up into code compliance and beyond. The anchor project for south of Kilbourne plat is J.C. Park, opportunities for improvements to the park, particularly the entrances to the park, making them better lit and more appealing so that this hidden gem that is J.C. Park is somewhat less hidden, so people can feel connected to the park in their neighborhood. It would also include renovations to the Scott May basketball court, and also kind of definitely upgrading these entrances, and also a bike pedestrian trail that would link J.C. Park north to the lake. Under identity and beautification, Hancock Corridor really came up as an area that would benefit from streetscaping and other beautification efforts. The houses along it are very beautiful, and so having investments along the corridor can help to complement the quality of the architecture. Another priority for identity and beautification include pedestrian improvements and traffic calming for Wayne Street as a way of reinforcing the Walk Wayne initiative, particularly because there are a lot of children that play in this area. Signage and also speed tables to slow down some of the traffic that speeds through the neighborhood now. Another beautification recommendation relates to making seamless connections and better gateway treatments for J.C. Park, as we talked about, and also improvements to the intersection of Columbus, Campbell, and Scott, which, as you probably know, a very complicated intersection. The Nehemiah Center is located right there, and making upgrades to help pedestrians get through that intersection more comfortably is one of the beautification and identity projects. Then, as far as other potential priorities, crosswalks between each section of Huron Park so that it feels like one park, one connected park rather than several small triangles. Also, this was a neighborhood where alley conditions were discussed a lot, and residents would like to see alley conditions improved throughout the neighborhood. All right, Garden District. The Garden District has a different sort of model block. Normally they're more rectangle-shaped districts, but in this neighborhood, focusing on Osborne Street and Central Avenue, by making those areas the focus of model block improvements, it really helps to kind of reinforce the linkage to Central Avenue. And also with Osborne Street, if there are pedestrian improvements and traffic calming, which is one of the recommendations in this section, having housing upgrades to kind of complement that, it just helps double down on the investment. The anchor project for this neighborhood is Healthy Hayes. It's Hayes Avenue streetscape improvements, which might include bike lanes, banners, planters, small public spaces along the corridor to really reinforce the idea of this neighborhood as, kind of a key eds and meds district. Another anchor project is potentially the redevelopment of Osborne School once a market assessment determines what the best use for that building would be. For beautification, primarily traffic calming and more pronounced crosswalks along Osborne. Central Park improvements, we have a whole list of them in the plan of things that residents would like to see as upgrades to Central Park. And then in this neighborhood, really, I know we mentioned it in a couple other neighborhoods, but the alleys were perhaps the biggest concern actually in this neighborhood. So if there was a place where you wanted to do a pilot program for making alley improvements, just to sort of test some ideas of taking, kind of these conditions and repairing them, that probably the Garden District would be the place where you might want to do that. It really is an issue that is important to a lot of people there. Lastly, under other priorities, this was a neighborhood that talked a lot about opportunities for community programming in the parks, the possibility of a green space and park, along with a community garden for Victory Kitchen, and then the short-term beautification of the American Crayon Factory site while the deconstruction process is underway, even just simple landscaping as a way of sort of softening the appearance of that site during the deconstruction process. Moving right along, this is the West End. The West End's model blocks area is surrounding Lions Park, and Generally, the idea for organizing the model block area there, which you see in blue, is, oh, right, it doesn't point on the, you can see it though up at the top, is that if you're going to be investing in Lions Park, which you are, having, kind of targeted improvements for the housing that surrounds the park really just helps those investments play off of each other to make the housing stock really strong, and then the park upgraded at the same time, give you this really core of strength in the neighborhood. So the anchor project that really we got to consensus very quickly in the neighborhood on this was streetscape improvements for Venice Road. This would include continuous sidewalks on both sides, or at very least on one side, opportunities for having a bike lane along the street as well, as a way of just kind of increasing the walkability of the neighborhood. It was a really clear priority. Another anchor project in the neighborhood is the master plan implementation for Lions Park, which I'm sure you're all familiar with the master plan. So all of the improvements to the parking lot and the shelters and other park improvements are included as that anchor project idea. For neighborhood beautification, the idea of lighting and landscaping for the Venice connection, particularly here, as the Venice connector curves, traffic turns off and away and ends up, kind of where it's not supposed to be. So really focusing on this area with lighting, landscaping, and signage as a way of keeping trucks and traffic that's going through, keeping it on the Venice connector rather than turning off into the neighborhood. This was a very big priority. Finding an opportunity for a community gathering space. It's a really big neighborhood, and so a smaller green space where neighbors come together. And then also looking at ways of creating neighborhood identity signage, both for the West End and also for historic Venice Village. So under the other priorities, some of the things we can talk about would include improved connectivity between the elementary school and Cold Creek Crossing, renovations to Wilbert Street Park. There's a discussion about LaSalle Street and whether it could be closed as a way of kind of deterring drive-through and drug activity. And then overall neighborhood maintenance, big, kind of priority is street trees trimming and sidewalk repairs. What you're seeing in this drawing is just a little overlook platform on a publicly held site off of Cold Creek Drive. This kind of is what we talk about when we talk about that sort of smaller green space where community members can come together. Last neighborhood is the South Side. I just turn to that page really quickly. The Model Blocks neighborhood is really clustered around Churchwell Park. Because the anchor project you'll see in the next slide actually is upgrades to Churchwell Park, having model blocks improvements around the park seem to make a lot of sense, as well as along Buchanan Street, which is a major thoroughfare, also a street where a lot of kids kind of walk along to get to school. So it's a part of the neighborhood where model blocks improvements would be highly visible and also helping to strengthen the improvements in the park. The anchor project is the park, which you see here at the center of this slide. The residents had a lot to say about things they wanted to see within the park, in addition to enhanced signage and lighting to make the park safer and more visible within the neighborhood. Opportunities for additional programming in the park. A park structure with running water also was very much a priority for the residents. Then also in terms of the anchor project, the opportunity to do some land assembly with some of the vacant sites around the park as a way of kind of creating land for future infill housing around the park, as well as some possible small-scale retail development at the southern end of Churchwell off of Perkins. Then for neighborhood identity and beautification, Buchanan Street was a priority for that, particularly lighting, landscaping, and bike lanes, since, as I said, this is a major corridor that kids use to get to high school. Lighting and art for the Camp and Hayes underpasses as a way of creating both increased safety, but also the idea of identity and sort of celebrating, kind of that connection between the South Side and the rest of the city. This is a neighborhood, again, where alleys and overgrown vegetation were an issue, and we also included in here the opportunity for some sort of short-term beautification of the American Crayon Factory site. Okay, so those were the 6 neighborhoods really quickly. The last thing I want to touch on before we, kind of open for discussion is how do we evaluate whether this neighborhood initiative is working? So in the executive summary and in the larger plan, we called out 4 kinds of indicators that I'm just going to review with you briefly. Oops, I guess that was that one. I have more details. For economic indicators, one way that you can see if it's working is if property values go up. And I want to make sure to say that, kind of just adding a crosswalk or, a nice little green space isn't going to directly impact property values. But over time, hopefully, you'll start to see numbers trending upward because public investments combined with private investments hopefully will then help to boost property values. And those can be tracked annually using data through the county auditor. Housing investments. We can track housing investments by looking at building permit activity. So permits that are above $5,000 are generally a really good indicator that somebody is putting, putting an effort into upgrading their house. On a sort of a more long-term trajectory, the American Community Survey, which is part of the census, comes out every 10 years with estimates in between, and you may start to see household and family incomes begin to rise. That's a good indicator of neighborhood strength. And then also through the county auditor, you can track property tax and income tax revenues by district just to see that things are trending in a positive direction. On a more immediate level, looking at kind of quality of life issues, one of the things we recommend using is the walk score. More and more real estate agents are using a walk score as a way that they market housing. It's really desirable for a lot of households to be able to walk and bike in the neighborhoods that they live in. So what the walk score does, if you go to walkscore.com, you can do it for your own property. You drop a pin and it gives you a score about how walkable the neighborhood is. And the good news overall is that Sandusky has a walk score of 79, which is quite high. It's out of 100. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact of just how compact and walkable and beautiful the downtown area is. Some of the neighborhoods, particularly Midtown, Kilbourne, and the Garden District, scored in the 70 range, 75 for the Garden District, which was our high. So these neighborhoods are already quite walkable, but with some added enhancements, those scores can go up. At the opposite end, the West End has a walk score of 18. So we hope that the Venice Road, improvements might help move that in an upward direction. Lastly, you can track, as Talon did in the early section, kind of infrastructure investments, kind of how much, kind of how many sidewalks, how many streets are being improved, kind of looking at that each year. And also looking at, kind of crime data to see if there's a decline, particularly in property crimes. Usually you can see some benefit when you see a lot of public investments. So the last category, actually just 2 quickly I want to touch on. One is place attachment, looking at whether housing vacancy rates decline, looking at code violations, whether they go up or down in the targeted neighborhoods. And also some communities are using a quality of life survey, something that can be quickly and easily administered, even on an annual basis, where the same questions are asked each year to see what people are saying about their neighborhood, whether they feel safe and comfortable in their neighborhood. Those kinds of, you can use SurveyMonkey and do it digitally or do it as a paper survey, but being able to see community attitudes improving is a good sign that the neighborhood initiative is working. There are a couple of 10 questions actually that we included in the executive summary that you could potentially use for a survey. Lastly, under neighborhood identity and branding, in some neighborhoods like the Cove District on the south side, people already are really strongly associated with the names of their neighborhoods. In some of the neighborhoods, other neighborhoods, people are, like for instance, McKelvey Platt was one that some people recognized and others didn't. So as people start to use the neighborhood names, that's a way of seeing whether the neighborhood identity and branding are working. So lastly, I'll just say that at the end of the executive summary, you can see some basic baseline data for each of the 6 neighborhoods now. And if you do check each year to see, kind of whether any of these indicators are moving, hopefully you'll start to see some positive changes in response to the investment in time and money that you're making in this initiative. So I apologize for kind of coming at you so quickly with so much information, but I will now ask if any of you have questions or things that you would like clarification or things you would like to discuss.
Thank you both for the comprehensive presentation. I was especially pleased to read about the metrics that you're proposing that we could use over many years, hopefully to track how this is doing. And I personally want to say I think it's a great plan. All of this, most of these parts and pieces over time are going to have to be, obviously the expenditures over $10,000 will need to be voted on by the commission as a whole, but so we may have differences here or there about implementation, but I really do appreciate all the work that's gone into this. Commissioners, questions and comments? Mr. Floor, you're not off the hook yet. He's back there in case anybody has any questions of Mr. Floor. I know you're out there working in the neighborhoods because I hear from people and they say, who is that nice, young, handsome man at work? And I'd say, was it Mr. Brady? They go, no. Kellen Floor? Oh, yeah, that's the fellow.
Easily mistaken.
If there are no questions or comments, thank you both for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We have a number of communications from staff regarding recommending various items. Commissioners, does someone care to make a motion to accept? Discussion? Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection. Turn now to the consent items. And Mr. Brady, in my absence the last meeting, he pulled this off without law. And I should have asked him to be coached in advance of the meeting tonight, but I'm just going to take a stab at it. Anyways, Mrs. Cresser, would you present the consent agenda items? First, I need to ask Commissioners, or anyone wish to remove any of the items?
Messed it up.
No. You get that part first. Anyone wish to remove anything? Then would you present the consent agenda items, please?
Yes, the first item is an amendment. It's a second reading for an amendment to the city's open housing code related to fair housing. Item B is an agreement with Medicaid Billing Solutions Incorporated for the Sandusky Transit System. Item C is a change order for the residential demolition project number 2, which is actually a deduct. And item D is regarding the new C1 and C2 liquor permit for Family Dollar Stores of Ohio Incorporated at 1622 Cleveland Road.
Commissioners, having heard the consent agenda items, does someone care to make a motion to move those forward?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brady.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda, declaring that all of these ordinances A, B, C, and the communication listed in D shall take effect in accordance with the section reflected in their ordinance or resolution, whether it be in section 13 or section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion, second. Discussion? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion first, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray? Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
And now on the ordinances and the ordinances and the communication.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Those items are adopted. Item number 1, please.
Item number 1 is an ordinance approving and adopting the Sandusky Neighborhood Initiative Plan for the city of Sandusky and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do we proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance and with the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Got a motion and second. Discussion. The issue of the deer track came up before, and I'm committed to seeing that through. I don't think that we need to proceed in Erie Metro Parks fashion. I think that that's something that the law director will be involved in a great deal as we move forward with that. But there are complicated issues that need to be sorted out. But I'm certainly, for one, committed to trying to make that work to the greatest satisfaction possible with the residents and the residents there and the property owners. But I do think that the city has certain legal rights, and it's high time that we take advantage of property that I think we own.
Chairman,
Ms. Poole.
how soon will we be doing whatever is necessary to determine the ownership of the property so we can, of the pier track?
Mr. Harris, are you able to address that at this point in time, or is that a next step that would occur once this is adopted? Mr. Whoopser, I know you had to step out for a minute, but the question posed by Commissioner Poole is when would we begin the process of addressing the questions surrounding using the pier track? What's the time frame for sorting out the various questions in terms of land rights?
Sure. Through the commission president to Commissioner Poole, and Director Byington, please feel free to supplement this, as well as Law Director Harris. We are in the process of entering into a scope of work for an update of the Sandusky Bay Pathway with Environmental Design Group, which was the firm that was selected out of that process. And ultimately, ownership issues are, in a broad-based way, part of that process. We'd have to supplement that with legal work, but our goal would be to have a really strong baseline of information that would provide us with a template for how we move forward on that. We've also talked through Director Klein's office about, we've used firms for right-of-way projects as it relates to sewer easements, et cetera, to have one of those firms potentially come in and help at the time that we have analyzed it, what those options are. The pathway planning process will identify up to 3 alternatives for where the pathway will actually go through. So if, for example, we determine that a complete linear collection or connection along the pier track is not feasible based on anything that comes out of that, although we don't think that will be the case, there will be alternatives identified that would show how to have the pathway go forward without going on the pier track. And secondarily, it came up actually in the CUDC planning process that you could still have public accessibility to the pier track that doesn't necessarily connect at both ends. And so we'll look at those alternatives as part of that process and then check back in as quickly as possible from there.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or comments, Commissioners? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the Commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 2, please.
Item number 2 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a contract with C&K Industrial Service of Cleveland, Ohio for the Venice Road 30-inch sanitary sewer cleaning project and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. I just want to note parenthetically, Mr. Twine, you have a lot of, and your department has a lot of items on the agenda tonight, and they're all very important. We're happy to spend the time working our way through them. It is a testament to your department, the amount of work that you're pushing through, and the folks that you have helping you. So a lot of items, a lot of money, but it's very important. So thanks for your leadership there. If there are no questions or comments with respect to item 2, Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 3, please.
Item number 3 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional design services with K.E. McCartney and Associates Incorporated of Mansfield, Ohio for the Thorpe Drive Culvert Replacement Project and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Presser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 4, please.
Item 4 is a resolution declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed 2017 sidewalk repair and replacement project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of cost thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this resolution on the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brady.
I wonder if Mr. Klein would share with us the, a little bit of the specifics of this. This contract pales in comparison to what we have done this past year for a very good reason. And if you'd share with us the footage difference here, Mr. Klein, that's glaring also.
Through Mr. President to Mr. Brady and the other commissioners, this year's project is significantly smaller than last year's project in square footage, but we are still doing 33 locations, which is about 8,300 square feet. Last year we did 26,000, just over 26,000 square feet, so it's about a third of the size of last year's project, for around $90,000, and last year's project, as you guys are aware, came around $480,000 for that project. This year, one of the differences is we're not removing any trees, so we're anticipating big properties this year because it's later in the season. We didn't want to delay this project like we did last year, so we picked properties that didn't have the tree removals as we did last year. So. We're anticipating this project to be 90-day, 60-day from notice to proceed, so it should be done before the end of the season.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. I love seeing these sidewalks repaired. If there's any extra money, Mr. Waddington, we need to get to those folks at the church. Was it, what's the name of the church?
Adams.
Adams in Columbus. Sure. You know which one it is.
We sent pictures of that.
Parishioners have asked for a little bit extra attention there. If there's
Mr. Chairman.
The ability, yes,
And since Ontario School's going to be there, we're going to have a lot more foot traffic there, and I thought it'd be that's a safety issue also there. The other areas that they showed, I know we can't do that's private property, but with teachers and kids getting on and off buses in that section, I think you got the pictures of that right. So if we have anything extra, if we could, certainly would help.
Mr. Chairman, this money that we're spending on this is a direct result, not of our survey of these streets or sidewalks, but they are a direct result of complaints from residents and property owners. And I think it's fair to point out that one property owner that we are going to be getting to, and it impacts the elderly, which is very significant. And that is the area that is very badly deteriorated in front of I'm going to call it the Rieger Hotel, which is no longer called that. But that's an area that they drop off and pick people up in that area, and that curb and sidewalk is in horrible condition. So that will benefit from this expenditure.
Further questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Poole.
After this, what's left to be done? How many linear feet are we talking about to have the entire city taken care of?
You, Mr. President, we have not done a full survey of the entire city, but based on the complaints that we've received since the project started about a year ago, we have probably about 3 to 4 years worth of backlog if we're going to be doing $100,000 a year. Now, last year, when we got a complaint in one neighborhood, we went and surveyed the entire neighborhood and added those to the project, where this year we're not going that route. We're doing the complaint areas. So there's a significant backlog that we currently have.
Mr. Klein, I assume, though, that if you have a complaint on a particular area and the one right next to it is in bad shape, you somehow figure out how to get to that as well. So neighbors should understand that we're not looking at this with blinders on. If there's an obvious problem that's adjacent to what we've been asked to attend, we take care of that. Yes. Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, just a comment. I would really like to see us increase the amount of sidewalks that we're doing. For me, it's a good project. I'm glad we're doing it, but this is nowhere near sufficient funds dedicated to this. But the need is just much too great to spend this little bit of money on it. Just my opinion.
Further questions or comments? I'd like to see us spend more as we have an opportunity. Last year we had an unexpected surplus funds that came in as a result of some of the earlier neighborhood-related mistakes. And if that opportunity would present itself again, I would hope we take advantage of that and might think about putting some of that, investing some of that here as well. Those would like to get caught up too. But that's obviously a budget issue. We've got police and firefighters to take care of, the streets and everything else. So, if there are other questions or comments, Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd? Yes.
Now the resolution?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd? Yes.
That resolution is adopted. Item number 5, please.
Item number 5 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a contract with Elliott Neon Sales and Service Incorporated of Akron, Ohio for the wayfinding and signage project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Chairman,
Lloyd.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole.
just ask Mr. Klein, we've got two, is item 5 and 6 are connected, correct? Full sign 5 and 7. Just between 3, just tell us what are the people getting for each one of these, so that they understand what it is. It just says wayfind signage. Just so the public has a general idea what's going on.
Through Mr. President, to the commission. The first item, which is item number 5, is permission to award the actual construction of the wayfinding signage project. That would go to Elliott Signs for a total of $360,399 for the construction. The second item, which is item number 6, is for the professional services agreement to oversee the installation of that for the inspection services. That would be with K. McCartney for a total of not to exceed $24,750. And as part of this, there's a breakdown in here of where the funding is anticipated to come from. And when we first approached the commission a couple of years ago, the thought was that the city would put forth about $75,000 to $150,000 of issue $8. Well, the city manager's done a spectacular job of rounding up additional funds, and the city's share, based on design, construction, and inspection, comes to $72,930. So all of that has already been expended. So for the construction and the inspection, none of that, there are no additional city dollars. The remainder is going to be coming from the ODOT funding. It's going to be coming from other private partners as well that are contributing towards the project. And also to address Mr. Schwanger's comment from earlier, one of the good things about this project is we are giving ourselves a template for future signs. We don't have something specific that says public access here, but we do have directions to waterfront. We have directions to marinas. One thing that we were told is you want about 3 to 6 lines per sign. And if you start adding more than that, it gets confusing and people can't read it. So what we're looking at doing is we have the downtown kiosks, which those are going to have specific locations on them of public access. We do have direction, some signage that points out how to get to Lions Park. We also, like I said, we have the waterfront and the marinas, but with that template, with having the design parameters for these signs, if we're doing something like the East Bay Plan, Jackson Street Pier, something like that, we can develop those signs, those additional signs that we can incorporate into those projects to point out that there is public access at this location. Those signs would be smaller signs that we could probably include in those projects for a nominal cost.
Ms. Bull.
Yeah, just a question. So, just so I understand, talked about templates. Do we create the templates, or what? Let's just put it this way: the verbiage on the signs is being designed by Elliott. Is that what they're doing? Is that their design? Is that what they're designing?
No.
Or are they just putting the signs in place that someone else built, or they're building the signs and putting them in place?
The design was done by Studio Graphique.
Okay.
Elliott has to submit the templates and submit their information, the materials, and all that has to be approved through a submittal process. To the engineering department and Kay McCartney, who would be doing the construction inspection. And then we have to approve those materials in compliance with the specifications, the design documents, the drawings, all of that gets approved in accordance with that. So we have a color schedule, we have the letter, the font for the letters, we have the sizes of everything. So in the future, if we do need to create something for public access, we have all of that information. And we can just provide that to a series of vendors at that time and get cost to do those individual signs.
Okay. So I can view the templates because we already have those.
Mm-hmm. When you say,
well, I'm trying to figure out what's going to be on the sign. Where's it going to go?
I can.
That's what I'm trying to figure out, where we are in this. The whole process, I'm not sure. It's unclear.
Through the commission president to Commissioner Poole, and Commissioner, I apologize if this doesn't exactly hit the mark, but I'll do my best based on the process, is Studio Graphique went through a process with our planning department as well as with downtown stakeholders to develop the maps, and they actually did a survey associated with that to determine what will go on those kiosk-related maps. And so those are the ones that'll be pedestrian oriented that Aaron mentioned downtown on the maps. And then as far as the other information, it starts at a really broad level coming in. So at the gateway to the city, the signs will just say basically City of Sandusky. And then you'll have larger trailblazer signs, which are dictated to major tourist attractions or places like the hospital. And then smaller signs that ultimately just directionally keep arrows in the direction so that people know once they're on a path to stay on that path. And then there's a downtown intermediary group of signs, I think at 4 locations, Aaron? 3 to 5 locations, where people know that they've arrived at the vicinity of downtown, and then more detailed. But all of that was done through Studio Graphique's work in partnership with folks in our own Public Works and Planning Department, as well as a group of stakeholders that Aaron assembled. That was a steering committee that were made up of residents and different folks. And so that was done as part of the design process, and the implementation of that will be done as part of the fabrication and installation process.
and if I could add one more thing, I think maybe my use of the term template, when we're striping a road or painting something on a road, we throw a template down and paint inside that template. We're not getting anything like that. We're getting the information for future signs. So I don't know if that was.
You gave me way more information than I had. Basically, I want to understand how this project is going to take place. It starts with, these are the signs we want. This is what's going to go on each individual sign. And this is where the sign's going to be placed. And
Yes.
I presume for what you told me, that's what Studio Graphique
Absolutely.
has done. You've got that. I can turn the map and look at it and see where it is. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
That goes to Elliott. Now, Elliott is going to design what the signs look like.
No.
What you're saying, construction? No. Okay, what is it that they do? It says construct, design, as I read this, that's what I'm trying to figure. That's what we need to go there again.
Elliott is required to develop a submittal package of exactly what the materials are, the sizes and everything else, and it has to comply with the specification and the drawings that Studio Graphite created. Now, we will take the information that we receive from Elliott and we will compare and contrast exactly what we've received with those specs and those drawings. We'll go out to the manufacturing process and make sure that it's the appropriate material, that it's the colors that we wanted and everything else that's already been identified, and they will just fabricate and install exactly what we've spec'd out, what we've required them to create.
Perfect. Then the last group, they just make sure it gets done.
And that it complies with all the ODOT requirements.
That makes sense. And when will all this happen? By when?
The end of October.
Okay, thanks. No, I get it.
Fast.
I'll be in your office to look at the material you have already. Thanks.
Commissioners, additional questions or comments on item 5? Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Abstain.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray? Yes. Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Abstain.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
That ordinance.
Chairman, now that that's done, can I make one last comment about the access signs? The access signs that you talked about have little to do with wayfinding. And may I suggest that we don't need to get a major project about that? You should, when you arrive at a location, know whether it's public access or not, and we have capability of making public access signs that sit at a location right inside. We can do that locally.
Yeah, for sure.
The sign department can do that. You should be able to walk up and know where you can fish, where you can't, where you should or shouldn't be, and it shouldn't take 6 months for us to do that. We just identify where they're needed and have our sign department make signs.
So we would do that on a routine basis going forward.
Yeah.
And that's the template or the basic generic design. The materials and the colors would be what we would be getting as part of the process. Item number 6, please.
Item number 6 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional services with K.E. McCartney and Associates Incorporated of Elyria, Ohio, for project coordination, construction, administration, and inspection services for the wayfinding and signage project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Abstain.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Brady?
Abstain.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 7, please.
Item number 7 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional design services with WSP USA Incorporated of Cleveland, Ohio, for the Columbus, Scott, and Campbell Streets intersection improvement project as part of the Campbell Street resurfacing project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. This is the you bet your life if you're a pedestrian intersection we've got going there. I'm glad to see that this is going off the bid for design. Excuse me. Additional questions or comments? Mr. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 8, please.
Item number 8 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an amendment to the agreement for professional services with Strand Associates Incorporated of Cincinnati, Ohio, to perform a green infrastructure evaluation, Phase 2 of the city's general plan for combined sewers, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Klein, why don't you, this is really important work that you're doing with Strand. Could you remind us of what it is that's being undertaken and why it is that we have it adopted?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. When we entered our negotiations with EPA several years ago for our long-term control or our sewer overflow plan, we developed a scenario that EPA liked of looking into supplementing some of the costs that we would have incurred implementing gray infrastructure projects with potential green infrastructure projects. Last year, that design or analysis project culminated in Strand determining that it was definitely possible for us to do that. And several of the key locations that they came up with were schools, larger properties like hospitals, things along those lines where there was a lot, where you could take a lot of stormwater at the same time and reduce the infiltration and inflow into the system. The next phase of the project, which was approved at the beginning of this year, was to fine-tune that and determine where the best starting place and come up with that portfolio of projects on how we could get the best bang for the buck right off the start. Going through that process, it was determined that the models and the information that we were working on was not something that we could rely upon, and that it was going to take a year or two longer to get the information that we needed for a significantly higher cost. So with the schools passing the levy and with those properties being critical to our plan, it was determined at that time that we would like to work with the schools, hopefully get some green infrastructure projects on their properties. And 3 of the properties that were critical in the plan were the high school, or the 3 through 6 property that's just to the north of the high school, the Hancock and the Ontario schools, which are all part of the renovation project. So we're trying our hardest to get out in front of this. We're trying our hardest to create a project that we're working with the schools, and we're timing it so that it can be done under the same, at the same time that the school schedule allows as well. So with this, what we are doing is we are reducing the amount of cost that was associated with Strand's original scope of work, and we're utilizing Strand as kind of our intermediaries. So when something comes in and it's got a very short turnaround, we can respond very quickly and determine if there's something that we can do that will benefit the city as part of that project. We have meetings with the school scheduled over the next couple months. We've got one, I believe, maybe even tomorrow, to discuss this thing exactly. And you know, some of the other things that aren't necessarily, that don't necessarily come out in these evaluations are the educational components, that we can get the students involved. We can do things that we've seen a couple presentations here previously that you know, the teachers want to get involved, and those are the people that we're going to be meeting with as well, to make sure that this project is going to be done as a whole, not after the school or in addition to something that's done, but to get everybody involved, including the students.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. And just a tip of the hat to the entire staff for the work that you've been doing, planning certainly as well. And Mr. Wobster, the feedback I'm getting from the school administrators are that they're really pleased with the way the city's been working with the schools. It's a great cooperative effort. We have certain things we want to see for the community. They have certain things that they want to see accomplished, but a lot of collaboration. So thanks all the way around for making that work. Additional questions or comments? Justice Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on item number 8, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole? Yes. Mr. Murray? Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
That item is adopted. Item number 9, please.
Item number 9 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a professional services and sub-grant agreement with Biohabitats Incorporated of Baltimore, Maryland for the Sandusky Bay Strategic Restoration Initiative and declaring that this ordinance take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
A motion and second. Discussion. Professor, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole? Yes. Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. That completes our regular agenda items. And we turn to Mr. Webster for his report.
Thank you, commissioners, staff, audience. I'll start with the donations. First, a $50 donation to the Fire Department Trust Fund was received from the Soloway family in memory of Tony L. Bonner. I'd ask for a motion to accept that donation.
So moved.
Second.
On a motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, the motion is approved. With our thanks.
Thank you. Second, the Washington Street Pier temporary concrete repair project was completed this week. A total of 30 bags of concrete valued at $120 were donated by the Home Depot, and an additional 50 bags of concrete valued at $200 were donated by Save Our Shoreline Parks. A total of 33 volunteer hours went to the completion of this project. Mr. Schwanger was not able to stay, but we want to thank him for spearheading that project as well. And I'd ask for a donation to accept both those in-kind and contributed items.
So moved.
Second.
And a motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, the motion is approved. With our thanks to all of those involved.
Thank you. Moving on to new and old business, the police department. We welcomed 3 new officers tonight. Just a reminder, their names are William Shelton, Brett Bird, and Darian Cook. They were sworn in on July 5th and start their training process over the next few weeks and then are assigned to a field training officers. Also, the police department passed out 1,000 optic lights for the 4th of July holiday to children at Movies by the Bay, in neighborhoods, block parties, and along the shoreline during the CP fireworks display. I have 2 young children at home who are proud recipients of those as well, so we thank the police department for that wonderful act of community service. Finance and exit conference on the 2016 audit was held by the Finance Committee and the external auditors on June 23rd. The audit reports are expected to be released later this summer. Moving on to Public Works, Duke's Root Control will be treating sewer lines at various locations throughout the city in July. This product will remove tree roots from the pipes. Also, Philip Baroni has received his Class 1 wastewater treatment operator certification that advances him to an Operator 1 license. Also, we'd like to welcome Charlie Collis, who's been hired into the Sewer Maintenance Division, and Matt Cullen, who has joined the Streets Division. Also, construction at Lions Park. Phase 2 of the master plan is scheduled to begin the week of July 17th. Moving on to community development, we just wanted to recognize that Laren Weichel of Erie Blacktop sent a letter just recognizing and commending the work of Economic Development Specialist Maria Muratori, and then generally stating that he notices a positive change in dealings with the city, which he's done a long time, and commended Mrs. Muratori, but also just the direction that the city commission and city staff is going, and encourage us to keep going in that regard. The Code Enforcement Division was recently contacted by a local resident who wanted to recognize 3 seasonal grounds maintenance employees, Dylan Lewis, Anthony Watson, and Joanne Minifield. Per the caller, she was pulled off on the side of the road with a flat tire during a very hot part of the day. The seasonal crew pulled off to the side of the road to assist her and called to thank. She called to thank those 3 employees for their efforts. Then she stated they were guardian angels. And so I think whether it's a letter from a longtime local employer about our economic development department or about 3 seasonal employees, hopefully that's the type of service that you will see more of, really getting in front of citizens, whether they're businesses or residents, and providing them with the support that they need. Also, American Crayon The city has reviewed the Phase 2 analytical results and also received demolition bids. Based on the results, the city is satisfied with its due diligence and purchased the property as of July 6th of last week. I know that you recently voted to award that contract, and we're very excited, and hopefully you'll see that project underway later this month or early next month. Also, the note is now due and payable for the leaking boot. The law department is currently analyzing options to secure payment. We've had very productive conversations with the owner and believe that payment will be imminent. Although it is past due at this point, we're working to make sure that we secure it as quickly as possible. Public services, Cholera Cemetery will be the home of our first butterfly garden. Milkweed and natural grasses have been growing at the greenhouse and now will be transplanted to the Cholera Cemetery. Greenhouse staff will also be making some modest landscaping upgrades. Moving on to recreation. The fourth annual and much anticipated Touch a Truck event is coming August 1st from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Paper District Marina. The Sandusky Rec Department, Police Department, Fire, Public Services, and Public Works all work together to make this event a success. It draws thousands of children of all ages to sit, touch, and look up close at many different vehicles, including police cars, fire engines, dump trucks, rescue boats, life flight, and many others. Food vendors, bounce houses, and giveaways are included. Come down and help share this family fun event. It is one of the most widely attended community events in the city, and we hope to see all of you there. That concludes my report for this evening. Thank you.
Questions or comments from the same meeting the other day?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
Regarding the, I think we're all excited about the American Crayon moving forward with that demolition with the good contractor, Mr. Perdue, that we have. My question is, do we, because we didn't have this the last time, I'm going to presume we do have it this time. That is a guaranteed time when that property will be on its back.
I believe it. Director Lasko, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. In terms of the demolition timeline?
Yes.
Yeah, through the Commissioner President, Commissioner Brady. That project has a 9-month completion. One of the things we did to actually try to get a little bit better bid on is to extend it through the winter season when work's a little bit slower. But from the notice of commence to Ed Perdue, it's 9 months to completion.
And that notice to commence has not happened yet?
It has not happened yet. It'll probably happen in the next 5 to 10 business days.
Great, and that's obviously that's important to our friends at Firelands Hospital and to every resident, both up and down Hayes Avenue and in the city, I presume.
Absolutely. And really quickly through the commission, Angie sent me a note on a public meeting that I should have seen earlier, but I neglected. Just one more reminder that on Thursday, the 20th, the Jackson Street Pier and Shoreline Drive Streetscape Projects public meeting will be at the State Theater at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We will do other things to get the word out. It'll be a public meeting on the Pier and Shoreline Drive at the State Theater at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on July 20th. So.
Additional questions or comments for Mr. Webster? We turn now to old business. Anyone having any items of old business?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Waddington.
A while back, maybe a couple months ago, I brought up about lead testing, and I got some emails. I see that we're working with the Matt England at the county, but in my research, I read through here and back at the Kids Fest, which I helped or worked at that day, 41 of the 90 tested for high levels of, and these were kids probably early teens, I'm guessing from like 8, 11, 12. So I would like to see, and I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but from my reading and research, and I've got plenty of it here with me tonight, and I've had conversations with you about this, I would like to see if the lead testing may be done at birth, if the health department could look at that. Is this, when the child's born, test for high levels of lead, you know, they test for other things in, or maybe in the mother, okay? We're throwing a lot of this back on lead paint, and that's been banned for several years. Could the health department track this maybe a different way? Look at a different approach. Offering a couple bicycles at Kids Fest to get tested is one thing. And then that was an alarming amount. And then when I read through more of this, up to 5,000 kids in every county could have lead, you know, high levels of lead. And I think that could even impact your learning disabilities, okay? And just every, you know, your everyday life. As far as, I just think it's a bad problem, and I know, you know, we've talked about it through this round. I brought up about possibility of lead in our water, and I know our water's safe. I get that. And I had mentioned earlier in a conversation with you and certainly with Kelly, I thought we were going to have our water bills for monthly for like up to a year, like a little reminder to run your water. I just got my bill. I must have missed it. I saw nothing on it. Is this going to be a one-time, we just send it out once, or?
Through the commission president to Commissioner Waddington, I apologize if we misunderstood. I thought that the public service announcement of Director Klein was meant to be a one-time or once annual notice. We'd be happy to increase the frequency with which we did it if that's what the commission wanted, but it is potentially a misunderstanding because I was under the impression it was a one-time deal. Aaron, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I guess the only thing I would like to add is that we did get many phone calls at the water plant from that one time, but we can put it on there as directed.
I guess my concern is the bills go to the, if you're a renter, I would say if I'm running the house to you, you would never see that particular bill, okay? And some of the flyers maybe just go to the homeowner or not the actual person renting. I guess that was a concern of mine. Could we do maybe a little more?
Sir, through the commission, go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, I was at the Health Board meeting when they discussed the potential for exploring ways to detect lead. And one of the things that came up was saying that we would do that at rental inspections. So to address your point, when we're inspecting rental properties, we would do the inspection for lead at that point, so that if someone doesn't see the notice, they don't own the property or what have you, and then we can do inspection there, and we can also do informing them of the actual owners of the property that are not renters at the time of sending out notices for the water to do inspections at that time too, because the health department is offering, I think, free lead inspections. So I guess working with the health department more and finding out or actually notifying them that they can do free inspections for lead.
So through the commission president, to get to Commissioner Waddington's first question, we have been working with code, and Matt updated me today. They are preparing on emailing every house that is registered in the rental registration. So that letter should be going out in the next month or so. So that piece we are following up on. I can talk to Aaron and we can follow up the commission on whether we want to more frequently have the public service announcement. And to Commissioner Lockhart's point, during the rental registration legislation process from last year, we did consider the potential of lead inspections, but based on some feedback at that time, and particularly that program ended up being limited to the exterior inspection, unless there was a reason on the exterior to look at the interior, it couldn't be included at that time. But Commissioner Twine, with support from Commissioner Murray and others, has been looking very closely, and we've been in active conversation with the health department about specifically something as it relates to lead inspections of the interior homes. So based on some state legislation and other things, we've been slowed down in that regard, but we do have commissioners that have been actively pushing that and have had active conversation with the health department about how we get those inspections going. So.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just do a follow-up. All I want is a different tracking mechanism for Sandusky. We are the county seat, and Erie County, okay? Pretty much everyone gets our water from our water plant. I know our water's safe. I'm not saying that. But if we had a tracking mechanism, if a child's tested at birth and he's got high, or the child has high levels of lead, where do they come from? And I know a lot of kids move around in Sandusky through rentals, and I get all that. But there's got to be a mechanism, some way to kick in that we can, a tracking mechanism, I guess, for the health department. I don't work there, I'm not Peter Shade, but maybe we need to look at this different, like the opiates and the drug, look at it from a different angle.
So, and I'm glad you brought up the subject, because I had a pretty lengthy conversation with Bob Englund from the health department after the article came out, because that's really startling.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really worrisome.
Yeah.
But he also cautioned me to take it up with some context. None of those kids were poisoned.
Yeah, it's just
they have it, it's in their leg,
yeah.
and we don't want to, anything other than above 0.8 is considered to be problematic, potentially problematic, because it can accumulate for a while.
Right.
And so he explained a lot of things to me that the whole situation is a whole lot more complicated than I realized. So the first dollars that they want to invest additional dollars in testing school-age children, because I mean that's when it has an impact. That's when the kids are eating paint. Adults aren't eating paint chips, and that's where, and they're not on the ground getting the dust in their hands and their mouths like young children can be.
Right.
So that's where the lead exposure is almost certainly occurring. And so what they want to do is they want to spend the they've got $1.4 million in remediation dollars or something like that. They want to spend that money on remediating those homes where those children have been tested positive, and they want to test additional children. That's the way they see is the most effective way. And I don't really like that as a final solution, as a final answer. Other communities have implemented lead testing every couple of years. I don't know that there's a perfect model out there. I don't think we want to, I think there's an inexpensive way to do it. I have, Mr. Whoopser's office was working on putting together, we invited Mr. England to be here tonight to address this. He had a scheduled vacation this week, so he was not able to join us. But we are putting together a meeting in the near future with some folks. I think Mr. Lasko is going to be involved in that, and maybe Mr. Harris, and I'm not exactly certain who all is going to be involved in that, but the issue is, to what extent would it be feasible to look at inspection legislation, periodic inspection legislation, realizing there's going to be some pushback regarding that. But I think that's incredibly important. And then looking at what a budget might look like, how we would fund all that. So all important parts and pieces, but I'm committed to seeing this through, if for no other reason, because I get my other ear chewed off at home about the fact that, these children are being exposed to lead, and that is hurting them academically and career-wise. So it's, to the extent that's happening, we need to fix it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Poole.
I was hoping, as I read that article, now that we've identified specific children at specific addresses that have elevated lead, we should be able to, and the article indicated that additional investigation will be done by the health department, which should give us a much, much better idea, since we're dealing with very specific kids, what the lead exposure came from. It's pretty popular, and since $1 million has been assigned to the remediation of paint chips, people seem to have jumped on the paint chip bandwagon. And I think currently with these 41 kids, the additional investigation should be able to identify whether or not paint chips in their homes is what the cause is. I mean, I grew up in a home that was built in 1948, and somehow or another, I do remember chipped paint, which I did need. And I'm not sure right now that we should be getting very involved in fashioning solutions until we identify where the problem came from. It's just as possible that these children, when you talk to them, if you identify their age and a lot of other things, they could have been chewing on toys made from China or lead in homes that have no problem whatsoever with paint chips. So I'm just being very cautious about making pronouncements about what we need to spend lots of money on at this point in time.
Duly noted, and it's just something we're looking at. And I wholeheartedly agree that we need to focus on cost-effective and effective solution. So that's why the meeting's set up and why we're not looking at draft legislation tonight. Additional question, let's see. I guess we are on new business. Any other items of new business?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
I should like to make a motion for an executive session to discuss eminent litigation.
Just as soon you didn't, but okay.
Second.
Me too.
A motion and second discussion. Mr. Crusher, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
That executive session is set. Other items of new business. And we will turn to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address the commission on any city items, please step to the microphone, give your name and address, and share with us your thoughts.
Catherine Carter, 5309 Columbus Avenue. Wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but when you started talking about the lead, I had turned in a pamphlet to Mrs. Kressler before the Kids Fest and suggested that the pamphlet be handed out at the Kids Fest. It talks about lead in the water and in your paint. There was a program on channel, I didn't write it down, I should have, talked about how lead affects your brain neurons. and it acts like calcium. It mimics calcium in your brain, and your brain needs calcium, but the lead blocks your neurotransmitters. And it was really interesting to see, but you pick it up from yards that are close to heavy used intersections have lead in them. More lead than a regular neighborhood. If you're sanding paint, a lot of people get into these old homes, they would like to do the renovations, and their little kids are crawling around it, breathing it in, and adults are breathing it in, and it affects them too. I don't know if those pamphlets can be put into people's water bills, along with anything else that can be added. It's an important thing, and it's scary to see what these kids go through, because you can't fix it. Other than that, I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Anyone else? Then we will take a very short recess, because I believe the executive session is scheduled to be just a few minutes, Mr. Brady.
Yes.
I think it's short.
Very brief.
And we'll resume.
Very brief, Mr. Harris, very brief. Long enough.